I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so we're going to get rolling right away. I mean, the thing, watching this film again, I've seen it a couple of times now, and my son is 14, and he spends about every waking minute that he's not in school in video games. And when we were first talking about this film, his first reaction was extremely defensive, which, he's 14, he's a boy, and so he felt immediately attacked. And I'm wondering, about the conversations that have come out of this. Oops. Oh, it's still there. The conversations that have come out of this film as you've taken it on the festival circuit with, both men and women and audiences of different ages.
Yeah, so, what's been interesting to hear is that a lot of people do connect this movie to their personal experiences. So I have heard from a lot of parents, people who are in games industry or in a tech industry or another male-dominated industry tend to sort of connect it to their own personal experiences. There was even a guy who was ex-military who talked about how he felt that environment was similar to what he saw in the movie. So, it's been interesting hearing from people who are both actually in the games industry and sort of on the periphery, because, those are both the audiences that I really want to reach. Like, I want this to just sort of be an awareness campaign in a way, but at the same time, the people who I ultimately want to watch this movie are the people in games who actually do want to make this change and, start thinking about, having a bigger conversation about games culture.
And have you, personally sort of run into any of the things that have happened in the film in terms of becoming a target just through the act of making the film?
Not too much yet. I guess we'll see. Not that many people have watched it. When we did the Kickstarter, I got a few messages about how much people hated the movie and how stupid it was, but it didn't exist yet, so I didn't take those comments too seriously. I feel like at this point, this movie's going to be released. It's available for pre-order. It's going to be out in just about a month. So really, I don't know. For me, it's a lot more about protecting the women who participated in the movie and making sure that they're comfortable with everything that happens. And I don't want any of them to get attacked, but at a certain point, there's not much I can do.
It's always a contentious issue in video game culture whenever we talk about the actual violence in video games. And that's for, I would say, anybody on either side of the sexism debate, because there was that period of time, and it has a tendency to resurge every once in a while, where news reports will come out of people who have no idea to understand about video games, and they focus on GTA exclusively. But the fact is GTA sells millions upon millions and millions of copies, and how do you really say that every single person is going to be influenced enough to be a serious violent problem, right? So it's always a very contentious argument, basically. That's as far as I'm going on that one.
I would say two things. First of all, it is definitely possible to participate in a piece of media, to play something while still being critical of it. And secondly, there are not a whole lot of other options, I would say, for some of these women who, let's say, really are into first-person shooters and really excel at them, and all of their friends play those games. And it's there might not be an alternative game like that with a strong female character, and since it is a shooter, there is going to be violence. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that people don't consider all of their genre options necessarily when it comes to games.
And they don't critique them either, right?
Right.
And that's the other thing too. It's it's not necessarily the case. I don't think people actually want to get rid of GTA, for example, right? It's that we want it to actually be okay to talk about it in terms of, can we actually examine it? We've got film critiques out there. Can we actually have game critiques out there? Can we actually talk about the themes and the symbols, right? So that's usually a lot of defensiveness there.
Okay.
Grand Theft Auto.
Hi, I wanted to thank you so much for your film. As a gamer and a feminist, it means a lot to me. And yeah, I guess I'm wondering what that what it was like recruiting people to talk about their experiences, and if you did encounter people who were totally unwilling to participate based in that. It was also awesome to hear about you saying that thing about film critique. I'm in film school right now, and I totally get pigeonholed into being a feminist, because every time someone just has these like thoughtless, sexist themes in their films, I call them out every time, and I'm like, guys, I have other interests. Can we do this? Can we talk about something
That's
else?
me.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you critique my sandwich, please?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I guess was that frustrating in like trying to get really amazing people to like work on your film because the threat of violence was like really real for them?
Through all of the people that I reached out to, only got one rejection. There were a few people who ignored me, which is okay. And I mean, I think there were a few factors in that. First of all, like I kind of just shot this by myself. So for people like Grace, where I would just come up afterwards, after like a panel or a talk or something, and just say hi. Like I don't know, I'm pretty non-threatening, so I guess that was part of it. And then I just feel like I was actually very pleasantly surprised to find out how willing people were to talk about the subject. And it's sort of, at the beginning, I just heard from my gamer friends, they sort of sent me like a list of who should I talk to, because I didn't really know anything about it. And then from there, one person would refer me to someone else, would refer me to someone else, and like, I guess the interview went okay, so they would say like, oh, why don't you talk to my friend? And so like getting references was an important part of that process as well.
Okay, so I'm a web developer here in Vancouver. I don't work in the games industry, so generally tech, ratios for the gender ratios are about 20 to 25% women to men, right? And as the movie mentioned, for games it's actually way farther down. It's like 4%. So I think it actually helps just actually getting people. Well, the indie game scene is huge for actually like getting personal experiences that kind of expands the number of games that have different perspectives. But even getting more women just into actually making games themselves. Because then what happens is that when you're actually, I would suspect that what happens when you design the game is different ideas become the default ideas, right? Like, I saw a news article the other day of, once again, like from a technology perspective, there was just like a gym in the UK that didn't allow a female pediatrician into the locker room because she had doctor as like her membership sign up, and it wasn't assumed that she would actually be a woman, because if you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you couldn't get into the change room, right? And it's like if you had more women software developers there, the default of that would probably be different. You probably wouldn't have that kind of thing programmed in. So if we talk about a zero-sum game, it's like you have to actually build into the idea at the start of what's our basic level of things. The basic level of things is have more representation, and it just becomes and it's not even a question. It's like, yeah, of course we would have that. Why wouldn't we have that, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that in the future the conversation about games can be like the conversation about movies, where, if you say, I don't like how Black Widow is portrayed in the Avengers, like, that, I mean, unfortunately that does, she dies. Just kidding, guys, I have to say that. Just because people are critical of that, I mean, unfortunately, online, like, some people will get upset about that sort of thing, but it's obviously not at the level that it is for a lot of things in games. So, I mean, what I learned from making this is sort of that there is this amazing creative space that games are just really at the beginning of exploring, and there's so many great like genre options out there. There are, educational games and historic games and all this cool stuff that I actually didn't even realize as an outsider. And I just hope that, at a certain point people are going to start actually like putting a cultural lens on these games in the way that we now do about, literature and movies.
I was wondering, is this culture, I know nothing about gaming, let me just put that out there right away. However, I can pick out misogyny and total dorkiness, stupidity, I can pick it out regardless, right? So I'm wondering, following on to what you're saying about the cutting room floor components, is this a culture that allows this backwater of idiocy to be fostered in there? Is that what this is? Because people are online and maybe they're just bad losers. They come out with these absolutely moronic comments that are evil. Would they be able to say the same thing about Jews?
The norms were kind of established with some of like the early players, for some of like the general ideas of what gaming should be, right? But having said that, there's a lot of changes that are coming. Riot, in particular, Riot Games, they make League of Legends, which is one of the biggest competitive games in. They fill arenas with the tournaments and the finals, right? But they actually have like a 30+ strong staff that's just dedicated to player behavior. And they've got psychologists on staff, data scientists, they've got rocket scientists. I think they said they had a cancer researcher previously or something like that on the team, right? And they do incredible work experimentally on their own player base to actually reduce toxicity. And it's amazing work, and they share their results, and I really wish that, and Xbox came out with the smart match system, and I'm really hoping they start releasing results there too. But I'll just try and, I could talk forever about that, but I'll just try and limit to one thing about Riot, which is they do a lot in terms of changing what our ideas of what, putting people into the good people or the bad troll people boxes. They do a lot of ideas of reform. And so, for example, they have, in order to prevent the likelihood of somebody who gets banned temporarily to go to another free low-level account and just continue toxicity there, they introduce just restrictions to kind of encourage them to keep on that account. They introduce chat restrictions. But what they found was that people who had previously been punished other times and found that they were toxic volunteered to have their own chat restricted because they actually wanted help to actually get better. They've had a 9-year-old kid write in and say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to say the N-word before. Nobody ever told me. Nobody ever told me. And so he was dependent in some ways because everyone else had failed him to actually understand that this is what, so there's companies out there that are understanding the social responsibility and things are changing, but the norms have started one place and they've got to shift to another place, so it's a lot of work. Trying her hardest to be kind of laughing everything off, and then the other players on her team are just yeah, she was fine until you sat down, and they're why don't you just go? How about you go, right? And so he's fine, I won't say anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't exactly, delve into the depths of his mind, but I think a big part of it was, he had this initial predisposition to be this sort of person who does that, and then, in conjunction with the live stream comments telling him to smell her, there were also people there who weren't necessarily stepping in or helping out, and I think that was, when I initially watched the video, so that video was actually the reason that I made the movie. And when I watched that was what stood out to me almost more than his behavior, because I think you can find people like that in any environment. That's not a gaming exclusive problem. The problem is that he thought that it was acceptable to do that at that level.
That was the norms that were established.
Yeah, exactly, the norms like Grace was talking about. Just, in that culture, he felt safe and comfortable enough to do those sorts of things.
She threw the game.
Oh yeah, I don't know why he's disrupting his own player. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
if
the
it was
answer to
that
that.
great of a coaching strategy, why didn't the other coach in the other team with Sherry do it?
Yeah, exactly.
How come she was
No, I agree, yes. That is very confusing, and it's confusing to me as well. I don't think it's a very smart strategy if you want your players to do well, but I think it was more important for him to get views and get feedback from the comments and sort of get people riled up than to win. I mean, I assume.